What's going on, everyone? Anything happened today? Well, it was too busy of a weather day, was it? What a day. What a day. Well, I will start this off by saying I am a bit sleep deprived. I am a bit sleep deprived. I am running on, I think, like 4.5 hours of sleep from last night. So by the end of the stream, I'm probably just going to be. I might pass out where I am right now. I might not even make it to my bed. I just. I I would probably be so tired in about a couple hours. I can't feel my eyes. But we're gonna break this down. I promise. We're gonna do this again. As long as Ian is a threat to make some significant impacts, we're gonna keep talking about this storm because um, people are seeming to be enjoying the streams, which is nice, and they're seeming to want some information, which is good too. And I like doing this. I'm looking at stuff anyway, so might as well just break it down. This time of night, I don't have much else better to do. Somewhat busy during the day, but so yeah, let's get into it. I'm not expecting as many people because they're probably trying to just get off Twitter because that's all they've done has been on Twitter and just with the storm. So I'm not expecting as many people, as maybe last night or the night before, etc. But uh, I haven't. We're still gonna probably have a good stream. People that live in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, they'll probably want to know about some of this stuff too, or if you have people that live by there. But yeah, let's get to it. We'll just let's go over what's happened. Let's do a little quick recap and just to lay the groundwork for what we got going on now. So currently 90 mile per hour, Category 1 hurricane, strong Category 1 hurricane, but forget really the wind speeds. Even though those wind speeds are still going to be doing significant tree damage and power line damage inland for sure, let's focus a little bit less on some of these current wind speeds. And uh, earlier, the satellite was ridiculous. We saw this intensify to borderline Cat 5. Could be a case in the reanalysis for a Cat 5, but that's not important for now, that 5 mile an hour difference. 155 mile per hour Category 4 hurricane, around 937 ish, I think, around 937 millibars. Uh, just historic storm for Southwest Florida. We saw a lot of comparisons to Charlie overall with the track, etc. This is not Charlie. This is much worse than Charlie. Some of these storm surge totals, I mean, I got a good feeling we're probably going to see some 15 plus foot storm surge totals out of this one, which is catastrophic. That's unsurvivable amount of storm surge. I mean, just really unsurvivable storm surge with this storm. If I play back, that's just from last hours, just unsurvivable amount of storm surge. See if I can find some clips of the storm surge. I'm sure I bookmarked something. I know I did. Or no, I don't even have to. I can slide through tweets. The storm surge was just ridiculous today. Just seeing some of those images are pretty harrowing. When you see that kind of, you see just water where it's not supposed to be that high. It's pretty eye opening. It's pretty eye opening. I know we got storm surge somewhere. You take a look at that. Just a yacht. Like on the second floor, it looks like this house. Yeah, it's the second floor. Water up to the second floor. This person, yeah, don't swim. Don't swim in it. Don't swim in the storm surge if you don't have to. This dude was swimming around in his house. But here you can see this kind of stuff that we're talking about. These storm surges. I mean, you look at the first floor of the house. It's ridiculous. in some of these storm surge. Can I go back to storm surge? Yeah, here we go. I mean, an unreal amount of storm surge. It's pretty eye opening. No, I want to get out of here. Let me take a look at this image. I mean, fifth. I mean, this is just. I mean, these are the tops of buildings. I mean, look, this is right here. It's probably what 10 feet at least. I mean, this is. It's just. This is the kind of storm surge that was unsurvivable, and we saw the strengthening. We saw it took place overnight. Take another look at some of these images. I mean, this is the first floor of houses. I think Fort Myers, the Fort Myers area, possibly took the strongest hit from the storm surge. I think relative around there, the Cape. No, that's fine. Relative around there took the hardest. Took the hardest hit in terms of storm surge. Maybe not full on wind speeds, even though the wind speeds in that the east southeast quadrant were the highest. And I wish we were able to get those sampled, but it was just too close to land at that point, so recon couldn't fly over land. But I mean, just some ridiculous. Actually, I should. What am I doing here? I tweeted out satellite 90,000 times today. Let me just go through the archive. You can see here making landfall. Made landfall around 3 p.m. today, just about on schedule. I mean, this satellite is jarring. I mean, that's probably not even the craziest. I mean, that's a crazy looking satellite for landfall, but even then, I'm sure I put something. I'm sure I put something else. Okay. Where did I? Let me take a look at visible satellite. Can I full screen this? Can't full screen the GIF. That's fine, but you can still see it. Just ridiculous satellite presentation. And I mean, we were talking about a borderline Cat 5 hurricane. That's what happened. This is what happened. So, and we're gonna talk. We gotta bring this up again. I talked about this. I've talked about this maybe like more than anyone else did. I'm not trying to like pat myself in the back or something. I'm just trying to explain that this this was partly like in my forecast this was partly in my forecast where I was looking for we talked about it. I'll draw over again. Right, so this is what I drew. This is the low level flow you can see here. I don't know why that just came up, but this is the low level flow here. And then this is the upper level flow. So this is basically what we're seeing when like the wind shear to its west and how it's pushing it, because there's the trough way up here in the US, and the way the angle of the trough, the way it's set up, we saw the upper level flow also in a relatively similar direction. So the outflow that the storm was working with was really helping enhance it. I said it was either not going to hurt it or at least help enhance the outflow on the western side. And sure enough, the convection on the western side, all storm really since in the last 20 hours or so. I mean 24 really, in 20 like the last 24 hours or so. Convection on the western side has been where it's been cooking, and then we'd see the dry air intrusions get into the southeast quadrant. and that's what we were looking at. And that's why it constantly the eastern aisle was constantly opening and closing, closing and opening. Just significant, not significant, but really small, minor stuff. But still important. I mean, I can draw it fresh. So again, this outflow just being so supportive, it's easier to see now, right? We see the low level flow here, and then the upper level flow. Just like this as well. So it wasn't perfectly parallel. It wasn't perfect. It was not perfect. But there was some enhancement of the outflow, or at least just not enough. There was not enough to try to work against this. And I try to compare it a little bit to Hurricane Michael in terms of not quite the same upper level environment. And I'm setting the stage with this for the rest of the stream. What we're talking about for second landfall, you can it's going to be hard because I don't have visible, so it's a little harder to see, but you can still get what I'm saying. Notice the storm movement here on this is moving like this, right? So this is the low level spin, the low level fort, the lowest, the strongest point. It's from the surface. Hurricanes are from the surface. That's where they start. So that strong spin at the surface is allowing the storm movement to get pulled right to the northeast here. And notice where our upper level flow is moving to. Northeast. And then an upper level anticyclone was placed like right next to Michael or near Michael. I forget exactly. I'd have to go back and look exactly. But so then this upper level anticyclone was spinning this side of the winds this way. That's why you don't see this being sheared. You see like this being sheared kind of. But notice this outflow doesn't really look to be that sheared. It's just getting pushed a little bit farther northward. Really big, large size storm too. Michael was, which is why we saw those big time double digit surge totals. And that's not even the most susceptible part of the coast. This is arguably the most susceptible part of the coast. But you notice like this isn't being like sheared apart, and so we have really supportive upper level flow here, and then we also have really supportive upper level flow on this side. So we're just enhancing the outflow. We're enhancing the outflow. And when you enhance the outflow and you allow it to breathe more, then that's when we can see, these spin faster and faster. And that's what we saw with Michael. That's a little bit what we saw with earlier today with what's the name? Ian. Ian is the name of the storm. I've said that so many times, but it's funny how you can still forget it. But again, talking about this last night, and this is why I talked about it. People were saying, well, isn't there shear and dry air? Yes, there is shear and dry air, but wind shear is needed in order to transport dry air into the system. So if wind shear, and this is my point to say, maybe the wind shear didn't exactly enhance the outflow significantly. Maybe not significantly, but you can tell just based on even this satellite, it is enhancing it just a little bit, at least a little bit. But if shear can't transport dry air into the system, so this is wind shear, let's say, and dry air is over to the west as well. It can't transport it into the system if the upper level outflow is not being pushed in by shear. So if the upper level outflow is just aiding with the storm movement or moving parallel with the storm movement and just aiding the outflow basically, then we're not going to be able to see dry air work into the core. And that was the main reason why we saw intensification immediately after the eye wall replacement cycle. There was a chance during the eye wall replacement cycle that we could have seen some dry air intrusions, and we did. It was a little bit complicated. Throughout after the eye wall replacement cycle, there were dry air intrusions, left and right. Like even throughout the course of the day, there were small little dry air intrusions from the southwest working into the southeast. Eye wall the storm, like really like small, but not allowing it, for the whole eye wall to be completely strong and wrapped around. But at the same time, we kind of knew that it wasn't the perfect environment. It wasn't we say that when it was a borderline Cat 5, but it wasn't the perfect environment. It just had enough variables in this scenario that was working for it, like the 30 to 31 degree sea surface temperatures, the very formidable deep ocean heat content, which is visible right here. And these values are more than supportive. And then it worked, when it worked over Cuba, there's some big values there as well. More than supportive deep ocean heat content, where the surface temperatures below the surface, the sea surface, the ocean temperatures below the surface, below where the sea surface temperatures are. These are sea surface temperatures. So the ocean temp below those sea surface temps, that's what this is measuring. So how much heat is below that? So we weren't able to see any colder water try to even attempt to well into the system's core. It wasn't possible. The deep ocean heat content was so significant that the latent heat release into the system's core was just the heat from below the surface was just really aiding in getting into the system's core and just constantly allowing for intensification whenever it was possible. And that eye wall replacement cycle wrapping up in 7 hours, that's what led to the storm to take off as much as it did. A 7-hour eye wall replacement cycle was just, it was with limited dry air intrusions, no massive core disruptions. That was the key. That was the key with this system. It was the eye wall replacement cycle. And I said it as soon as I saw the eye wall replacement cycle happen and I saw how quickly it was happening, I knew, I just knew that this was going to be bad. I just knew, because it was just perfect timing. It was perfect timing. The storm didn't have the perfect environment, but it had a little bit of luck work its way. You ever see maybe your favorite sports team, maybe you're not a sports guy, but your favorite sports team, maybe they didn't play their best game, but a little bit of luck happened and they were able to win the game. They managed to win the game. They had some guys injured on the team, but they were still able to pull out the win. That's kind of like how it worked here. It just had some variables go right, even though it wasn't the perfect environment. Again, when I say this, it was the perfect. It did have the perfect environment up until Cuba, up until the Cuba landfall, and just after the Cuba landfall, it had pretty close to the perfect environment. Not the perfect of most perfect environments. I know I've said perfect a lot, but it didn't have the top tier of all environments for intensification. Obviously, it didn't, because it took a little bit of time until just before Cuba, 24 hours, where it ramped up. That was when the environment was probably the best. So that beginning process, though, allowed that inner core to develop. And what happened is it went over Cuba, only weakened 10 miles per hour over some terrain too. It wasn't just flat elevation. It moved over terrain, some pretty hilly elevation, not a mountain range, but no like massive mountain ranges, but some pretty hilly terrain. Worked over that, only weakened about, I think 8 millibars and 10 miles per hour, ramped back up pretty quickly, got its act together again, and then held steady for about 8 hours after that eye wall replacement cycle, and then we saw the intensification take place. And again, as soon as I saw that eye wall replacement cycle happen, I just, as quick as and I saw it. It wasn't as I saw it happening. It was when I saw it happen as quick as it did. And even when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, if this happens fast, this is not going to be good. This is not going to be good." Because now with the new eye wall replacement cycle, the new outer eye wall, when this happens, the old inner eye wall, usually smaller, or starts to erode, and this concentric band around the circle will take over, and then will start contracting until it becomes a little bit bigger than the old eye. And that's what happened. But with larger eyes, we know the concept of angular momentum in physics, where it's pretty simple. The larger the eye, the slower it's going to take to intensify, but less susceptible to dry air and wind shear. I've now said multiple times that this storm had variables working. It had multiple things work in favor that became clear over the last 24 to 48 hours, where it could withstand dry air and shear. That's multiple variables of this storm. And when you see that, that's a good sign that this thing is going to be able to intensify. Because even though it can't wrap up and quickly intensify as it was before Cuba, with a smaller eye, or just in general with a smaller eye, now you could argue it's going to be able to intensify more in the long run because of the larger eye. It's a stronger, it's a larger storm, so pressure is still going to remain really strong. And what the larger storm is going to allow storm surge totals to increase, the wind field to expand. And this overall, the eye wall replacement cycle was really detrimental to Southwest Florida in this case, in my opinion. It just was not. This was not. Florida did not. They could have. I think they could have done without the eye wall replacement cycle, because it's possible the smaller core would have had a lot more problems with dry air intrusions. But at the same time, it's a hypothetical, because maybe the upper level outflow was so good on the northwest side, or maybe the eye wall replacement cycle before it encountered any possible dry air intrusions and intensified so much. But again, that's just a hypothetical. At this point, the eye wall replacement cycle didn't help, though. It didn't help, because we got 150 mile per hour Cat 4 at landfall. And that was kind of my thinking. I told you last night I think we could get a mid-grade to high-end Cat 4 at landfall. So I hate being right in this scenario, but hey, I was just trying to provide the most accurate forecast I could. It's really I take a lot of pride in trying to make the most accurate forecast I can. I'm ultra competitive. I know I don't really show it. It's hard to show yourself being ultra competitive in Twitter, but I am ultra competitive, and I hold myself to high standards. I'm a perfectionist just in general. That's why a lot of the tweets, I like to clarify stuff, and in a lot of the stuff I tweet, if you notice it, maybe you just don't, and you just enjoy the content. If you do, thank you. But a lot of the stuff that you notice, yeah, we're gonna talk about. I kind of blabbed on a little bit, but we are going to talk about that re-intensifying in the Atlantic potentially. Yeah, we are going to talk about that. But if you notice some of my tweets, notice how a lot of times I go into threads, like probably like a quarter of my tweets are threads at this point, because I like to be clear, and I don't want people misinterpreting what I'm saying, and that's really easy to do on Twitter as well. So I want people to understand what I'm saying, and I don't like being misinterpreted. Um, and I hate being wrong. I like, I don't mind, I don't mind being wrong in terms of being able to learn, but I hate like being wrong in terms of like potentially information that affects people's lives. I don't want to be wrong there, even though I'll still learn. I want to learn it and make mistakes at the less impactful forecasts, like snowstorms, not hurricanes. Yeah, let me check on the YouTube, see if there's any folks commenting there that I might have missed. No one on YouTube. That's fine. That's fine. No one commented on YouTube. You can watch on YouTube as if you want as well. And I am able to see Twitter comments easier, but I do check in on the YouTube comments as well. So yeah, that is that's how we got to where we are today. That's how we got to where we are at this point. We made landfall around 3 p.m. And it's slowly, the wind speeds have slowly came down, but the onshore flow was still pushing a lot of wind surge, storm surge. That's a little north, but still pushing storm surge. Once the backside rolled through, a lot of people said the backside, mainly the people that were on the north side of the eye wall. Mainly people that were directly even or north said the back side was stronger because it was that eye wall. You could consistently see the mesovorts on that western side throughout the duration of the storm. The last 24 hours, you could see those mesovorts on the western eye wall. But the east-southeast side, I think, is potentially, if there were Category 5 winds, I think it was there. I think that's where the Category 5 winds were, if it ever was a Cat 5. So yeah, and there still is even, I think, like 5 feet of storm surge still pushing in. The water levels are still like 5 feet above what they're supposed to be right now, 5 to 6 feet in Fort Myers, like right now, like 9 hours after landfall. Just goes to show you, once landfall happens, the storm doesn't just it's over, it's done with. Landfall, yay, we're done. Nope. Especially because we have another landfall to track too. And that will segue me to in a second after I talk about the flooding. Briefly. I'll try to go really briefly with the flooding, and then boom, we're gonna talk about the second landfall. Yeah, this dude NASA, that dude pissed me off. We'll talk about. I gotta bring up the Cantor thing too later on in the stream. But when he said that Tom Whitmire, NASA guy, that pissed me off, man. That pissed me off. It's not even a named storm. You're the head of NASA. You're not the head, but you're one of the heads of NASA, and you're saying this. It's not even a named storm, so we're not worried about it right now. Who taught you anything? How could you live that long on the earth? I could understand if you were a kid and didn't know that. How could you be living? I think he's like in middle age. How could you be that at least? Probably older. How could you be that middle age, older white guy making a comment like this? Are you kidding me? How could you possibly have any, like, you're in the science, you do science. You're in the scientific community. That's how you got your job. And you're telling me it's not even a named storm, so it's not going to be a problem. He said this 5 days ago. So, respectfully, I would like an update. Please, Tom. after the 155-mile-per-hour hurricane made landfall. Sorry, I had to go on that tangent. That was frustrating. But the rainfall is a big problem. Big problem. So now that it's made landfall, we have this ongoing. Remember, we have this. I mean, I can pull up. I should pull up radar right now. Actually, we have this. Right. So we talked about the trough, the influence. So that's pulling a lot of the moisture north. So right now, the northwest side, and we have the dryer this whole time has been able to try to work into this side. So it's kind of like a half cane right now, where the south side it's probably still really windy. This part is it's probably pretty windy in here still. Probably more windy closer to here. Even though it's light precip, still it's probably pretty strong winds. Probably still getting your your 60 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts. Probably still 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts in here, even though it's dry. It's dry. It's probably still gusting pretty good. And same for here because rain's pulling it down as well. But if I zoom in one more, we've had flash flood emergencies throughout this evening, all the way from stretching. Why did we shrink? Don't shrink. Extending from here, we've had flash flood emergencies extending from here to about here, and they're probably going to continue to extend these because this is a swath. We talked about this swath of 20 to 30 inches of rainfall. That was when we thought it was going to be a little bit slower, but we're still looking at a swath of potentially, this 15 to 25 inch swath of rainfall right here, with some spots getting over 30 inches locally, maybe even 3 feet. They're lucky or unlucky. Unlucky, obviously, but lucky just based on where the rainfall sets up. Technically unlucky. Obviously unlucky. Yeah, I'll play the loop, and you can see what I'm talking about because it's moving. I'd argue this storm's moving a little bit more northeast than northeast. I can see why it is moving about that, but I'd say it's starting to move more now northeast. And this will this will be a good segue in a minute. In a minute will be a good segue. But you can see, the core it's a lot of latent heat release from all these, really warm ocean temperatures that were able to produce that convection in the eye wall for hours on hours on hours and hours since last night. That's still getting pushed, into this eye wall. Also, part of it we're going to talk about for the next landfall, the convection that's just getting going just because it's associated with the vorticity of this storm. This is not even part of the inner core. The ocean's so warm though out here that it's firing up this convection as well, slightly associated with the trough. A little bit of wind shear with this one, with these rain bands, but still. So we have really heavy rainfall. Orlando, they'll be curious how much of Orlando, does those 15 to 25 inch totals stay south of Orlando, or do they make their way into Orlando? The NWS WPC they have high risk. Here we go. High risk of flooding, but they also let's just go to this graphic. They think Orlando's going to be able to get into those totals. They seem confident. I would maybe shift it just a little bit more south, some of these totals. just a little bit. So yeah, it looks like Orlando's going to have a shot to get into these 15 to 25-inch rainfall totals. So yeah, we talked about it. Boom. This is where those heavy rainfall totals. This is probably where I look for the heaviest to set up. Right and around here. This is where we'll probably see 15 to 25 plus inch rainfall totals, and with some 30 to 36-inch localized totals. So this flood threat does not exist. And then with the next one too, the rainfall, out ahead of the trough, right? It's been pumping moisture, so we've already had some rainfall probably in here from that, just in general, and then combine that. My man John, what's up, my guy? And then with the second landfall, also going to have deep tropical embedded moisture. That's going to be pumping heavy rainfall again into the system. So the rainfall is no joke. No joke. Could be some catastrophic flooding. So this is, in terms of retired names, we possibly have had 2 retired names now just in the last week of hurricanes, which is pretty ridiculous if you ask me. You don't see that too often. So, and actually, how are we doing? On ACE. ACE is the accumulated cyclonic energy. It's what's used to measure typically the duration and strength of storms in a hurricane season. It looks like it worked its way to 14.1, and we were running below average for a while and didn't even count today. Hasn't counted today yet, but we're almost about average. We'll probably be just below average after Ian is done. But again, it's still probably going to be near or hurricane strength for the next 48 36 hours. So it's going to be able to add more. It's going to be able to add more accumulated cyclonic energy. ACE. I don't want to say it that much, just ACE. But if it's new to you, you may not. It may be better to understand. That was a little bit of a ramble, but that's okay. All right, let's get going. I'm going to tweet out to folks that may have left because they wanted to know about the second landfall. I can just do that. We can live tweet that. That's no problem. I know they all love the live tweets. Bro, you have no idea. I had a tweet that banged today. I had a few tweets that banged today. And then when I say that, I'm not trying to make content that just pops off. Something that just happens coincidentally. But the shark tweet went off. That thing, that thing did not take long. And the amount of people that commented tarpon on that, I've never heard of a tarpon before. I'm not a fish expert. The person said shark, so I just said shark. It is what it is. Man, Twitter was crazy. Hell of a day, obviously. Historic day. But let's get into this second landfall. So I'm curious with the second. Here's the first point. I told you we'd break it down. The shark. Don't even start on the shark. We're moving on from the shark tweet. Oof. But with the second landfall now, I'm curious to see how fast it gets off land. the duration, the amount of time I can get back in the Atlantic. Because we look at these ocean heat content values, where these are ridiculous. I mean, the whole Gulf of Mexico can support a ridiculously intense hurricane. Basically, any of these values, all of this can support a strong major hurricane. All of these values can support a strong major hurricane right now. And even these can support a major hurricane too with the right upper level environment. So that's not an issue. Ocean heat content is formidable, very strong values. And then sea surface temperatures too. It's going to work off the coast. I mean, obviously, right by the coast, they're a little bit cooler. But that may not even be as much of a problem, given it's going to go a little bit of an extratropical transition, because it's going to eventually be just a big upper level low. So there's going to be some cold core characteristics. Worst case for South Carolina, we'll get into it. I'll say, but worst case is this thing gets off land as soon as possible. We're kind of breaking into different scenarios, but short story short, it gets off quicker, intensifies, and then it's like a strong category 1 or something, or I guess theoretically something stronger is possible, but it's just there's a lot of variables it's going to take for that to happen. I guess you could say like Cat 2 is like a worst case scenario, but for now we're going to keep it like probably Cat 1, just because there's a lot of different variables. Like it was a little bit easier with the last one, but with more of a stream interaction with the trough, much more significant dry air, there's a few more variables that are complicated with the second landfall, where I can't as confidently say that this thing's just going to be able to get right off and intensify. But I'm gonna go into depth of why different intensities, etc., can happen. The different kinds of potential intensities at landfall. So we're just getting started into it a little bit. But I'll be clear and concise. Break it down. Laying the groundwork. But these temperatures a little bit cooler right on the coast, but obviously we still have these 28, 29 degree sea surface temperatures, and even these are 28 degree. All these are 28, 29 degree sea surface temperatures in this area. And these are going to be those are very supportive values. Combine that with the deep ocean heat content, definitely supportive for like a strong major hurricane. But it's not going to be able to do that. But I'm just saying, in terms of sea surface temperatures, deep ocean heat content, not a problem. So let's check that in the favorable column for this storm, for the second landfall. Now, in some of the more, we've been talking about this trough. I have shown you guys so many times on these streams over the past week or so, to the point I'm going to lose my mind if I say the trough one more time. But I love trough so much because they make snowstorms. So I'm never going to get mad at saying the word trough, even though I'm not going to say I overused it because it's valuable, but I've used the word trough a lot over the past 2 weeks, even with Fiona. Like, damn, what? Watching Weather Channel, Lakeland still gusting big time gusts in Lake, looks like over 60 miles an hour. But that's beside the point. Get the 500. I'm telling you, 500 is key. I'm telling you, for my value I have, with a little bit of a winter guy, is I know I understand the 500 Vort, potentially just a little bit, or you maybe not understand, but utilize 500 Vort and have a better understanding of how this relates in some of these systems, especially once they get into the mid latitudes. or this in the subtropics. I can relate that a little bit. Like these last couple storms have been up my alley. I would say Fiona and Ian here have been up my alley because there's been a lot more. The troughs have been a lot really very connected to these systems. So I'd say that's the value I've been able to have with some of these. But again, we were talking about that. I mean, this was 0Z last night. David Ogas versus. But still, remember, we're talking about, look at the angle of the trough. This is what I was talking about. Or it's not even that. Right? And then look at the storm movement. You know, that's kind of what it was, right? So it's not perfectly parallel, but it's pretty close, you know, if I play this out. And that's why this is important for the second landfall, because again, how quickly can it get off landfall, and how quickly it heads off to the east can also tell us maybe our trough's digging down more, because the more this trough digs down and holds back, the more stream interaction we're going to be able to see, and the more that this thing's probably going to feel the tug of this trough, and the more it's going to be able to create a little bit more weakness in the ridge and maybe slide off east a bit faster, and then maybe a little bit higher up, and maybe not that far, but you see what I'm trying to say here. You see what I'm trying to say here. That's why I've been saying it's been key, and that's why, you know, a lot of those runs like 5 days ago, we're trying to show the stream in action. It gets pulled up, and then we see, you know, Cat 1 from all the way, you know, all the way from down here. We see Cat 1 impacts, but that's not on the table at this point. Like 99% certain that's not. That's probably not going to happen. That's basically a lock. Best impacts for here. Maybe some gusty winds and tropical rainfall. Some possible, I don't know, let's say significant. Not significant compared to here, but just significant compared to your regular thunderstorm. Probably some significant flooding and maybe some gusty winds relative to your usual downpours. Tropical downpours are a bit different. That's the, you know, like probably your higher ceiling impact event for the Northeast. But that's why we're not talking a lot about the Northeast, because Northeast isn't going to be really impacted by this. At least not to the level these folks are, for sure. You can lock that one up, 99% certain. But again, how much can this trough dip down a little bit more? Just even a little bit makes a difference. How much can this tuck down? And it's basically locked in, but it's not locked in terms of how much stream interaction, because the stream interactions are really complex. You know, until the day of, these things can change until this actually happens. So it's not going to be a complete phase like a lot of the models were indicating like 5 days ago or something. But there's more of a phase now. There's more of a phase, a little bit of more of a kind of a phase where some of the energy gets left behind in the trough, where you get a slight phase into an upper level low, and it looks like this cutoff low, or is this cutoff low, or is this? Yeah, I mean, it looks like this big ridge, so kind of associated with this cutoff low, this big ridge is shooting. It shoots a little bit of energy down into this. It's going to shoot a little bit of energy down into Ian as well, and watch. You can see it. See how it kind of gets. See how, notice it's not just the trough, but also some energy vorticity from back here. It kind of gets entrained into the system as well. into Ian. Notice how you see that now. See this piece right here. See how this kind of gets. This is not. This is not this is not part of the trough here. This is not part of the trough. Well, it's kind of the trough is out of the picture now, but that's where the trough was. So it looks like a little bit. It's going to turn into an upper level low as it approaches the coast and as it moves inland. So there's a slight stream interaction with this system. And then now it just becomes a bowling ball low of, we have two bowling ball lows, basically a pair of eyeballs, as there's one in the west coast, not west coast, but mountain west, and then there's one on the east coast. But this one's pumping tropical moisture at this point. And even this piece of energy is going to pull down some Gulf moisture and pull not even Ian moisture into the system. So it's going to have, it's not, you can't like double the power. That's not how it works. But you have this pulling in some Gulf moisture into here. And then you also have it pulling the Ian tropical moisture into this system as well. So you're going to be able, there's going to be a flooding concern too at some point in this area, at least minimum. There's probably going to be some flooding concerns into this area, especially with the Appalachians that run down, potentially some runoff issues. And depending on how far up the coast this can move, that we could see some potential more flooding impacts to watch then for far southern New England and Jersey, PA, New York City. So we could theoretically some impacts could get extended farther north in terms of some flooding, but we need to see this slide up the coast a little bit more and slide farther up. Blacksburg, is that Virginia Tech? Right, so that's kind of like I'm not mistaken, right? That's somewhere in here, right? Blacksburg. Okay. Yeah, you could have some flooding to watch. I mean, you're going to be right on top of that. You're going to be right on top of that upper level low. The upper level low at this point's kind of weakened, but still the energy left behind. I mean, in the P-type map, I can play it out. You can see it. Obviously, the trough's going to want to touch some of this moisture, but there's going to be probably some solid convection by the center of the upper level low where that is, but then also the trough pulling some of this moisture out, because this is basically a boundary that's getting just stretched out, and then probably the coastline as well can get some significant flooding. Oh, it looks like I just kind of just drew a car. So there is going to be some flooding concerns, I would argue, just because it's going to be a big upper level low, and then it's kind of, notice how it just slows down kind of. So it's GFS on this specific run, it's advertising just a lot of rain to get pulled offshore. But tropical systems aren't perfect, and models don't, especially global models, are going to struggle a little bit. So I wouldn't rely on this exactly. So we are going to have to probably watch for some tropical flooding. We could see maybe I don't know, moderate, but we could see some slight risk flooding. I would almost guarantee that we see some slight risk flooding into this region, and potentially even if it develops. If we see some variables develop where it's even better, we could be looking at a moderate flooding kind of day, maybe, by the WBC, the Weather Prediction Center. So that's why the the tropical impacts with this system. Got the Weather Channel on the background. TV just kind of went to sleep mode, so I had to fix it. But so as this, so why did I go into that whole spiel there? Why did I kind of go off a little bit off course, a little bit off on a tangent, off topic a little bit? Was because we're looking at this for a potential extratropical transition, and as that happens, what makes this complicated is when it starts to, we see that stream interaction. The big questions are, how much influence is this trough going to have for how fast can it get off Florida into the Atlantic? And obviously we know hurricanes strengthen over water with some rare cases. There's some rare cases, but hurricanes, 98% of the time, they strengthen over water. So how long does this thing stay over water? And then, is it here, or are we looking at here? Where are we looking at? Or I guess in a wide, crazy scenario, we see something work up here into North Carolina, but that's probably the widest of possible solutions. Somewhere in South Carolina is likely. Probably I would put South Carolina as a good landfall bit, just as a little bit in between. It wouldn't shock me. I would say there's a better chance, in my opinion, for a North Carolina landfall than a Georgia landfall, even though it would looks like it wouldn't take as much for a Georgia landfall to happen. It would be a lot easier for that Georgia landfall to happen compared to a North Carolina landfall. But based on how I think this plays out, I think eventually it will be a better shot for a North Carolina landfall than a Georgia landfall. But I would say it's 70% South Carolina landfall and 30% Georgia or North Carolina. Because, it looks like it's trying to pull it off the coast. It looks like it's trying to pull it off the coast pretty fast here. I'll show you radar. Where's the National Hurricane? Let me show you where we gotta go. This guy posts has every update for the tropical stuff. Good follow too. This guy Eric Burris, good tropical follow. He's not really going off, but the updates come out quick for the advisories. So usually a lot of times I see what the wind speeds are from his stuff before anything else. And this was 11 p.m. So, and they're not doing one. It's not as catastrophic at this point in terms of intensity where they feel they need to do 1 hour advisory position updates at this point. So it's probably here at this point, I'm guessing, and it's working its way off. So how quickly can this, we'll switch to yellow. How quickly can it work off the coast? We see here, or is it going to be here or here? This is going to make a difference. This is going to make a difference. And it looks like it was getting tugged off the coast for a little bit. It looks like it was trying to a little bit more easterly motion, even though it's still moving northeast or northeast. And that's why how much influence that the trough to the north, how much can that tug on it is going to play a part. And how long can it stay over water, which the longer it stays over water, like I just said, the more strengthening we can see with this system. But what can limit the strengthening potentially? What can limit the strengthening is, what can limit the strengthening is if we look at the dry air. Here we go. That was just a buffer noise, I promise. So obviously, the problem, one of the significant problems Ian was having to worry about is dry air working around from the southwest, some southwesterly shear, working dry air, not shear associated with the trough. This is just more, well, kind of associated, but not let a little bit more indirectly. And this is not supportive for the outflow, and this is what's been working in. Without that southwesterly shear, who knows how strong Ian could have been. Who knows how strong Ian could have been? That could have been maybe we could have been talking about like 175 mile per hour Cat 5 realistically. I'm not joking. Without this, we can thank this a little bit. Obviously devastating, but we can thank this dry air for not being able to close off and make the eye wall fully wrap around and look, like they have that perfect eye wall and not allow it to attain. That's what didn't allow it to attain Cat 5 status, assuming it didn't. But dry air is going to work more into the system, but it's still going to have, yes, but we're going to see a little bit more. It's going to have some cold core characteristics. And as we know, with cold core systems, with mid-latitude cyclones, it's, we see the big comma shape, right? Imagine the big nor'easter here, and then it works in all that dry air around. Right? Or no, that's not how the dry air works in. The dry air, I didn't even need to delete that. Here, let me show you a nor'easter. I had to draw nor'easter myself. This will be better visual for you. I mean, this kind of almost like a hurricane. This one is a little bit hurricane-like, to be honest. Subtropical. It looks a little subtropical to me. But what happens is, right, the dry air gets worked into the system, even though it has all this convection working around it. It's pulling this convection up and pulling it into the north. And obviously, the cold air is working from here, and then it's working around and into the system, and then this dry air works into the system's core. That's how it works with. I probably should have made this image bigger, but hopefully you can see that. If you're like on a phone, it might be a little bit harder to see, but hopefully you can see that how the dry air works and wraps around the system, and dry air doesn't really work against mid-latitude cyclones because it's a part of it. It's part of the nature. What makes mid-latitude cyclones and what makes snowstorms so big is our fronts. Are the fronts. Severe weather. Dry air is important. It's dry air, cold, dry air, a lot of times colliding with warm, moist air. And that's how we create big severe weather thunderstorm fronts. That's get dry air to work against the moist air. Too complicated. The dry air, cold dry air working against the warm moist air from here. That's how we create frontogenesis, and we get big deform bands. One didn't form out here, but I'm just showing you in this particular storm. Kind of cool. You can see the snow cover. Can't wait for that. You can see all the snow cover in Canada here and back here. And even this one produced snow in the southeast. You can see here as well. But that's just off topic. So dry airs are a part of these mid-latitude cyclones. So having some potential cold core characteristics, how much is actually gonna dry air work against it if it's already gonna be a little bit slightly hybrid of a system? Also, with this trough. This trough, right, going out here, and then the kind of the edge of the winds from the center of Ian itself is going to create a little bit of a pressure gradient. So we're going to be seeing strong winds front, outer winds here. We're going to be seeing strong winds all along the northeast Florida coast and all along the southeastern North Carolina coast, and even just southeastern North Carolina, probably inland some as well, southeast Georgia, eastern South Carolina, probably 30 to 50, 35, 50 plus mile per hour wind gusts, maybe even a little bit stronger. So probably storm surges, even we could see some big waves and storm surge potentially even start before. It's probably not on the coast, but combine those winds, with a little bit of the core. There's going to be a little bit of a combined pressure gradient, especially somewhere in here. You combine that pressure gradient with also the core of the winds as well from Ian. There's probably somewhere in this northeast Florida area with that combination is going to have the flow of the winds, right, as it moves here. The winds move like this, here, and then they move around to the backside. So if the center, say, is right here and it's pushing water this way, notice how the coastline is set up. So that means it's pushing water right into the coast. And at that point, we're having some significant storm surge potential. Probably not life-threatening, but there's somewhere as well. Not only there's going to be storm surge as well, just in general, probably almost starting already soon. But just in general, there's going to be some storm surge from Ian itself, from the inner core, and the close proximity, but also somewhere close to the edge of the pressure gradient, and just the pressure gradient of Ian and the trough, that in between pressure gradient, and the pressure gradient of Ian itself, the actual storm Ian is gonna create some potentially significant storm surge because of maybe 50 to 70 mile per hour gusts, at least, maybe even stronger. Maybe we're talking like 60 to 80 mile per hour gusts if Ian starts intensifying tomorrow. Again, it's not a guarantee this thing intensifies. It could just, whatever it gets out, it only strengthens like 5 miles per hour, etc. And even then, that would make a slight difference, but not too much. It's probably not going to weaken, but it holds ground. That will be important. That's why how quickly it gets into the water will be key. But the reason that makes me think this is going to intensify is, despite that dry air, there's the way the convection's been able to pop the whole day. Billy's been talking about this a lot too, as he's been watching that eastern side. Is the convection has been popping all day. It's been popping all day on that eastern side, with a little bit shearish, but it's been more shearish, kind of, with a little bit of pressure gradient and less of the pressure gradient that we just talked about, but just different location that's been set up on the eastern side, just off the coast of the eastern side of Florida today. I know it may be hard to understand some of what I'm talking about because it sounds good in my head, and then maybe when I say it, it doesn't come out perfect. But these are important stuff when it comes to like the finer details of the storm. So as it moves off the coast, how much it intensifies, to see how much storm surge. It seems adamant that's going to be able to create in some more moisture. It's gonna start working in a big bubble of moisture. Try to fend off some of that dry air. So we could see a little bit of a half cane, still like a half cane, but still pumping in moisture. Let's see. I want to zoom in more because I want to see if how much is getting into the core of the system. I mean, even then, the direct core is fending off pretty good. How strong? 982. Even the direct core is fending off the dry air pretty nicely. Some maybe on the eastern side, but not bad. Yeah, so GFS has it going 8 millibars, strengthening 8 millibars now. This is really curious. This is slightly beyond my knowledge in terms of this kind of stream interaction, because typically with this kind of stream interaction, we'd see a little bit more visible cold core characteristics, and the inner core itself. Excuse me. The inner core. I am a little bit tired. I am only running on 4.5 hours of sleep from last night, as I mentioned in the beginning. But as the cold as you usually will see more cold core visible characteristics with a storm that's making a stream in action. We see some sort of baroclinic process. This is a little bit more complicated because this is just it's like throwing a piece of the end of the edge of the trough where it's not the trough's not picking it up fully, and it's just like a piece of it that's kind of injecting into the system. So we're seeing a limited stream interaction, and then eventually, obviously, that next piece works in as well. But notice right here, you could watch. This is kind of convection that's getting pulled in between the outflow being and the outflow of Ian, and also the trough pulling, the outflow this way and pulling convection east. That's why we have that convective. You can see the scrolling thing. I see now. I see what Billy was talking about with the pen here. See how this is just getting pulled? Oh my God. You see how this is just getting pulled? So on the one of the bright sides of this is we would have probably seen a lot more devastating flood situation. One of the few bright sides of this not pulling up and then weakening a lot up here and getting sheared off. This was a bright side, at least for these people, in terms of flooding from rainfall. Because, and even here, we would have probably seen some 10 to 20 plus inch, maybe even more rainfall totals. Because look how much look how much. This is a lot of moisture. This is a lot of moisture, and that wouldn't have been good. So at least on the bright side with this kind of easterly track, it's going to be a little bit less of a flooding disaster for these folks in here. But we just saw a much more catastrophic storm for Southwest Florida, and also now bigger wind and surge impacts now for Southeast Georgia, probably northeast Florida too, with surge pushing in from here and strong winds, as we mentioned, with the pressure gradient slash, the actual storm itself of Ian, and then also, surge, even if the center doesn't make landfall in this part of South Carolina or North Carolina, surge will get pushed in as well. So that's the downside to a track like we have now. But again, notice as this becomes more extratropical, notice it pulls, and it pulls the dry air in, and that's more like an extratropical transition. It's also a weakening upper level low at this point too, so the moisture profile won't be as strong, a bit less divergence. But still, looks like it even creates a little bit of a weak low pressure system in between. This transition from here to here is where we see the transition of the extratropical, I think. From there to there is where we see that upper level low start to form and take over. So we're probably going to have to look for a landfall at some point Friday p.m. So probably anywhere from noon to midnight, I guess, would be a good time frame for somewhere for there to be a landfall, anywhere in that 12-hour span. Again, we're looking probably somewhere landfall anywhere probably from here. That's where I would lean for landfall. Probably I would say it has a better chance to be in this northeast part than it does this far southwest too, as we talked about a little not too long ago. But I'm genuinely curious to see how this process works. Because there's can clearly see some cold core characteristics and a little bit almost nor'easter like with the way this is set up. It's not nor'easter. Well, it's. I mean, these are northeast winds here, so kind of. But not really. It's not really a nor'easter. I can check on YouTube. I'm sorry I didn't check YouTube, folks. I'm sorry. Tornadoes. That's actually a good point. That is. Thank you for bringing that up. I think I'm missing something else with the general. The storm. And I think we talked about the NAM 3K is forbidden. The NAM 12K, though, I will say, I forget. I think John was the one. I don't think it's possible John's not in here right now. But the NAM 12K, NAM 3K is just no. There's too many problems with any kind of just the pressure, the way it goes off. It just affects it too much. Oh, you still in here? What eWeather talked about with that. With the it applies to not the 3K. I thought they were just talking. He was just talking about the NAMs in general. The 12K though, because it's not the 12K. The resolution's not quite as high, so it can't run off and just spin off, a pocket of vorticity and just take off with it. So the NAM 12K is a little bit better for track. So we might use the NAM 12K to illustrate in more of an outlier scenario, because even though it has a lower resolution, it does take off. It does take this thing off. So I want to see how that relates. So eWeather does have a point, and I remember Matthew Douglas too, who's a really good New England follow, for especially winter storm stuff, and he's more of a long range guy. That's what he specializes in. He works at the Blue Hill Observatory here in Massachusetts, which is a well renowned, actually pretty country, around the country. I think it's pretty well known by meteorologists as a good weather observatory. But he also mentioned the NAM 12Ks actually can be used for track. That I kind of that recrossed my memory right now. I remember we were talking about it for Henri last year, which that thing didn't pan out to what we thought it was going to be, except for Rhode Island. They got hit hard. They got like 60 to 80 mile per hour gusts there, which is big power outage problems. Rhode Island got hit hard on that one. But I remember he was talking about with that storm with Henri, the power outage, or no, sorry, not the power outage. I'm sorry, mine's racing so many thoughts at one time. The NAM 12K is okay for track purposes. But I say okay. It's not like better than any of their models, or even potentially as good as other models, but it's not the worst. That still doesn't mean the NAMs are good for tropical cyclones in general, though. The bill stands to that, especially about the YouTube folks that were curious about the NAM. The NAM is more for the NAM is more for wintertime. We'll use the NAM a lot more in the wintertime. We'll look at the NAM a lot more in the wintertime. We'll look at more models in general in the wintertime, because we want to look at all the different 500 millibar patterns. Whereas a lot of the stuff we look at with tropical cyclones, there's just visible observations. We can use that a lot more to make forecasts. But than we do with winter cyclones, because we don't have as many visible observations we can make. With winter, there's no we don't look at satellite and go, oh yeah, there's we can see the winter storm. It's starting to intensify. It's on Alaska. That's not how it works. These things intensify for like a 12, 24 hour period as it's happening. These things intensify as it's happening. It's not like they're intensifying beforehand. Winter storms intensify literally as it happens. Yeah, you can't look at satellite 5 days out and figure out how this relates. You can only look at satellite like as it's happening, or in the beginning stages of right before the biggest part of intensification's happening. And maybe you can get something out of that. But other than that, we'll look at a lot more models in the wintertime for just a more variety. But tornadoes, I'm sorry, I would kind of go off on a tangent. Tornadoes, that is, now that I think about it, because we're a little bit more of a hybrid system, so that means we're going to have a little bit more shear present, given we talked about with the trough. There's going to be a little bit more shear present. And let me slide here, get a sip of water, so I've been kind of talking a lot. So once this becomes, this is kind of dry air meeting warm, moist air, cooler, dry air meeting warm, moist air. This is particularly still kind of warmer than general, but when that happens, we can kind of, that's how we create fronts. And I'm going to see if we get one, a little bit of a front here. So as it pulls inland, what you're going to want to look for here is probably, let's say it makes landfall in the middle of South Carolina. We're going to look for is this quadrant right here. This is where we're going to want to look for tornadoes up into here. Again, they're typically short-lived, but that doesn't take away from the fact that's a tornado. You say short-lived, but a tornado is a tornado. If it hits your house, it hits your house. It's a tornado. That doesn't change whether it's wintertime, summertime, tropical time. It's not really a season, but when it's tropical time, it's still a tornado that's going to hit. So that doesn't change the fact it's just a tornado. But they're you don't see typically as many long duration tornadoes. The reason we say short lived is because for meteorologists they're harder to track, and you can typically miss a lot of the tornadoes, a lot of these that happen because they can spin up so fast and go away. But that doesn't change the fact that they're still tornadoes. And they can still be strong tornadoes. We've seen EF4s before from we've seen plenty of EF3, EF4s, plenty of SIGTORs before from hurricanes. Isaias is a great example, and that also that was a Bear clinically enhanced event where we interacted with the trough, and that's what we're seeing with this one. So typically systems that meet that meet the jet stream and that meet with troughs, tropical cyclones, those are ones usually have to worry about for tornado events. And that will probably be the case with this one. So I don't know the exact specifics in terms of like photographs and all that stuff. We're not going to get into that. But just because I can't go into, it's like two different things. It's like going over severe outbreak setups. It's like going over a severe outbreak and going over a hurricane at the same time. That's too hard for me to do. It's too much time. Maybe if I really have some time that I want to go, and if I'm really like, if it's a really big time tornado impact, maybe I'll go look into some of that stuff a little bit more. But yeah, we'll probably have to watch for tornadoes. I will go as far to look at the Storm Prediction Center, though. We can go look at the Storm Prediction Center. See what they got. That's their tomorrow risk. And yeah, you can see they have it listed. Only marginal, but their 3-day is probably not going to be. Do they have a slight? No, okay, they're just all the different things. So typically marginal. 3 days out, there's plenty of time to upgrade this. So I could see this being a slight. Probably this probably will get upgraded to a slight. If I had to guess, could say marginal, and even then, if it was marginal, you can still definitely see tornadoes. Still could be few. You can be a half dozen, maybe even a dozen tornadoes in marginal. Just because they have it marginal doesn't change what's from actually going to happen. That's just their forecast. And their forecast could still be accurate, and you could still get tornadoes. So, but probably some sort of slight risk, I would say. Some area of a slight risk. I bet this gets extended out a little bit more, this marginal, and then we see another probably slight pocket in there as well. Take that. Then a slight pocket too, something like that. So yeah, probably get some tropical tornadoes as well. And you can see this is thunderstorm risk with that upper level low, that other upper level low we were talking about as well. Does that talk about the tornado threat enough? Hopefully, the nav. Yeah, we the nav gem. The nav gem. Just because you hit the bullseye once with a dart, that doesn't mean you're good at darts. Um, it's like baseball. Just because you hit a home run does not mean you're a home run hitter. So the nav gem is not, it's not a reliable model. I get it's fun to maybe get caught up in looking at all the which model is going to do the best, but remember, models, we're not looking for models to make forecasts for us. We're not looking for models to give us the forecast. We're looking for models to print print a scenario that we can use to compare with what we think is actually going to happen. So that's important to remember how we use models. Models are tools. They're they're trying to make forecasts, but they aren't forecasts themselves. So it's important to remember uh, that we use it, and I wouldn't know if it did a good job or not. I Because I don't even look. It's not even worth looking. That's how frowned upon that model is by the weather community. Not exactly. Not, because maybe it hit it right one time, but all the different scenarios it played out during that span. The nav gem is not the reason. The nav gem didn't um, take away or save lives, because it's an inaccurate model. It's the physics in the model are not as good as the GFS, in the Euro, and probably even the NAM. The NavGem has had way more screw ups than successful predictions. I'm not just. I wouldn't be saying that just to say that. I'm reassuring you. Again, we talked about models. This, but you don't want to use those off models. The models that aren't from the main go-to ones. The main go-to ones we talk about: the GFS, the Euro, and the Canadian. These are like 1A and 1B. Yeah, off brand. That's what came off to mind. I mean, it's just those off brand. They're not the same. These three are your top three. Canadian is like three. It's like the worst. Just too many inconsistencies with the physics of the model that go into it. And depending on the setup, the system, Euro and GFS are 1A and 1B. Those are the two clear top global models. The JMA, the Icon, and the NavGem. But these are the two same models, by the way. They Tibbets added the Euro like last year, and this is just if you want faster in 24-hour increments, and then the regular Euro with more features will load out after. So these are just the two same models. But the JMA, the Icon, this is a Japanese model. Icon, the NavGem, a Navy model. You do not want to use these global models with trust. Out of the crappy ones, I would say the Icon is probably the best out of these crappy ones. But even then, you don't want to use these three. Mesoscale, we talked about it. Your NAMs are your best for tropical systems. That's not the case, but wintertime, your NAMs and your HRR are probably your best, your top two, and then even then the HRR is only good for really really short term stuff. And in terms of outside, once you get outside of that 12-hour range probably, and then even then the HR, you're still even inside that 12-hour range. It's not great. It's more like inside at like 6 hours. It's going to do much better with, and then so HR only goes out to like 36 hours. So once you start to get 24, 36 hours out plus, these two, this is just a higher res model. The HRDPS is just a higher res model of the RGM, and the RGM is just a higher res model of the Canadian global model. So these are just two high res Canadian models basically. The Canadian and the NAM and the NAMs. The Canadians and the NAMs are the two best mesoscale models to use, outside of that 24 hour, like that 24 to 48 hour window. And even then, they're just more tools, and they really shouldn't hold a lot of weight in terms of the actual forecast at that point. These are just tools. And you don't want to use any of these ones. The FV3 still has a lot to work on. This is like the GFS high res, like the American high res. This still has a lot of flaws in it. And then these two are cam models. So they have a bunch of cams. They're called, so like it's a suite of cams. It's like all a different suite of models. And the Tibbetts just has a couple. These are more for severe weather that they're more used for. And again, most of these mesoscale models will only use more of the winter time. So hopefully that explains. Ensemble, I'm not a huge ensemble guy because I don't feel like I need to look at ensembles to understand. I'll use ensembles. I don't even need to like go out of my way to look at them because people love to post those things so much now on Twitter that I don't really need to go looking for them now. Because people are addicted to them. But the ensembles are they're not operational model runs. They're like 50 different model runs. But the physics, yeah, bro, they post them all the time on Twitter. They're just like so they'll have 50 different model runs with a bunch of like similar but different kinds of exact physics that go into the model. So it's like changing, like it's a bunch of different probabilities basically. I'm printing out a bunch of different scenarios based on the physics that are in that ensemble member. They'll take in the exact data, the exact same way the operational model took it in, but then all the ensembles will spit out a bunch of different scenarios. If they all had the same physics, then we'd only have one model, wouldn't we? They're all different models designed from different origins, different countries. If every model used the same physics, and that model was wrong a lot, that would be a big problem. That's why we have different models. Because with different setups, some do better, different scenarios. And in time, these will all get hopefully a lot better. They try to make one really good model. They try. It's hard. I mean, a lot of these models compared to how they used to be, they're all really good technically. In the grand scheme, in the general scheme of things, they're all really good. It's not like we're not ever caught off guard this day where there's just a hurricane where we're not going to pick up on a hurricane like 24 hours out. We have no idea it's coming. That never happens anymore, really. Like, and even then, if we were like kind of caught off guard, we knew some sort of system was coming. So, models are way, way better, and they're really good. It's just when you're being so perfectionist and there's so many different, cities and towns in a close proximity, and the United States is so populated, so there's so many different people in a, relatively, there's high population density areas now, especially along the East Coast. We look at it and man, it was so off. The model run was so off, but in reality, it wasn't maybe that off in the grand scheme of things. It's just one city was 20 miles and that was 20 the next one, and there's a lot of different people that live in between those cities. Yeah, they are. Model runs are fun to look at. They play all the different scenarios. They can be sometimes entertainment and not realistic, but the model runs can be addicting to look at. When do they come out? Every 6 hours. Um, the so zero Z, which is right around. Models are coming. The zero Z, the end of the zero Z models are coming out right around now. Zero six C, 06Z, 12Z, 18Z, and then zero Z obviously again. So they run 4 times a day. I don't know when they were invented, but they've been on the up and coming for the last, I would say, like 10 years now. I'd say, they took, there's probably an upgrade in the, what, 2 decades ago, and there's been an upgrade in the last decade or so too, and then, decade they've gotten better and better. We've had models way before 2017. I can promise you that. But yeah, we'll take a. The NAM track is a bit different, so I just want to illustrate it. It's important to note the NAM has this too. Okay, we're not going to ever look at the 3K, but has it no weaker than 991? Kind of holds 991 tomorrow morning in the afternoon, and then see with the NAM, it wants to intensify it right away as soon as it gets in the water, and starts getting pulled off to the east, starts to really take off. It's got convection. The if it does get if we do see a more intense storm, then maybe convection will start to see an eye wall that gets convection pushed to the west northwest. Yeah, because dry air is going to be on the east side, so strongest convection will probably be on the west side of the eye wall. But it is trying to put down a really strong scenario. But just in track wise, it's trying to put east South Carolina in play. So that could be interesting. Maybe the more again that more time over water, maybe a little bit more stream interaction, a more like fluid stream interaction than just a less sheared apart stream interaction could allow for this to intensify a bit more smoothly. So it's just a different scenario. We can go to CONUS, continental United States. Yeah, just a little bit more stream interaction. Just a little bit more stream interaction. But notice how much farther too it pulls that upper level low inland, pretty still strong, and that's going to allow for. And notice as we start to get more classic, if it, this upper level low, then we start pulling new tropical moisture. Oh, that was the wrong color, blue. Starts pulling this tropical moisture up, plus with the remnants of Ian, and that's going to allow for some significant flooding, which I'm sure it displays. Again, the long range NAM isn't all that reliable, which will go over time and time again in the wintertime. But you can see that tropical moisture being pulled up on the east, right around the east coast. Favorite model for winter? Why don't they have? It takes a lot to make models. It's not just. There's a lot of money that goes into these. There's a lot of money, a lot of resources that have to be put into it. The Euro is technically a high res model. So the Euro, even though it is a global model, it is technically a 12-kilometer high res model. So that's why the Euro can kind of sometimes have an advantage in the wintertime over the GFS in the short term, because the GFS resolution is not as good as the Euro. And so that's why the Euro can have advantage. I mean, there's all different. I mean, they're from different countries. There's, we talked about the JMA for this Japanese model. The Euro is European in the UK. The GFS is an American model, obviously. There's all different kinds of models from that were designed in different countries that are used. Yeah, it costs money for everything. Everything costs money. The stream costs money. I had to buy a mic. Everything is money. But again, you can't just make unlimited amount. Then you're wasting a lot of resources. Sorry, I don't have all the answers, but you can't just make an unlimited amount of models. Believe me, people are trying. They're putting resources. It's not like they aren't putting resources. That's not how I'm trying to phrase it. They are. It's pretty complicated. You ever think about it? We're trying to predict the future. It's we're that's literally what we're doing. We're trying to predict the future. It's not like we're supposed to have the answers to the test already when we go into systems. It's not how it works. We have to figure it out. We're trying to predict the future. Not too many jobs you have to worry about predicting the future. Like predicting the future in gambling is just luck. I don't know who owns I don't know who owns the models, but I guess I can search it up. Not that question. I never really needed to search. It's run by the National Weather Service, so it's run by the government. All right, yeah, I was gonna. That's what I think. These models are run by the government. It's not like a private enterprise. Well, you do kind of have to pay for this. I just use free websites, but there's different websites where you have to pay for models. I wouldn't be against it if it was really good. I'm not sure if there's I'm not sure how what it takes to make your own weather model, but um, it takes someone really smart who's really smart and really good at programming. Let's check in. It's like Orlando's starting to get into some of that heavy rain. We get a 2 a.m. update yet? Nothing yet. Very last position, so it's probably it's almost off the coast. It's probably slowing down some a little bit, and it's gonna slow down tomorrow too. So it's probably not maybe not stall, but notice not making landfall. Not making landfall for it's gonna at least have a day in between a relatively short area. So this thing's not going to be going 20 miles an hour. So it's probably somewhere in here. Probably, if I had to guess, somewhere in here. It's possible. Maybe the forward movement has slowed down a lot in the past few hours. So I'll be curious what movement they have. They have Ian moving. What the storm movement is that? I mean, I typically don't use online, but I mean the radar, the National Weather Service just has a good radar site in general. Um, just pretty good resolution. I don't want to use like AccuWeather or the Weather Channel. It's just the one I know. I mean, I'm sure there's others, but yeah, Radar Scope is my go-to. I'm typically checking radar on mobile. I just can't do that while I'm on stream because I have to use the iPad. Plus, you can't see it. I'm not going to pay for another radar scope, and I just use radar scope on mobile. But I can't check radar scope while I'm trying to check for Twitter live comments as well. So radar scope is my go-to. Wintertime too. But we'll probably pull this one out during the wintertime. We'll figure that out when that comes. we'll figure out when that comes in the wintertime. We'll see. We'll see. We'll do some research. Oh, Orlando. Orlando gusting 60 miles an hour right now. You can see it on the Weather Channel. 72 with 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Core is closer to Orlando right now too. I mean, were they in the cone? Yeah, or just on the edge. They were outside. Looks like we get 2 a.m. yet? Not yet. Yeah, boy, they're coming. They're coming. Couple months. Couple months. Sorry though, I feel bad for you in Blacksburg. Although Blacksburg it's a little bit better than a lot than Mid Atlantic Virginia. I'd argue. Like true mid. Like obviously Virginia's mid. All of Virginia's Mid Atlantic. I would argue. At least some would say Virginia's the South, but I will always argue that Virginia maybe there's some hippies out here. There's some hippies out there, and there's some hillbillies out in this part of, in this part of Southwest Virginia. But I would argue that. Oh, okay. Oh, that yeah. College, yeah. Okay, so that makes more sense. So you'll probably still have pretty heavily invested ties, but yeah. Um, yeah, I'd say this part is better than you won't able to get into any of these, like things that ride up the coast. Well, transfers you will be able to, and inland runners too, slight inland runners, but I'd argue that's a better spot to be just in general to see more snow um, than like this part of Virginia here. Then maybe I have to eat my words. Disney should be closed. No, bro. The Disney closes when it when it thunderstorms. This they have to delay their rides and stuff. Disney used to hit when I was younger. Actually, even now I still like roller coasters. I like the thrill. So I mean, yeah, that's a lot of elevation. 2,000 feet elevation. That's gonna help you being in the Appalachians, especially too. Especially as you can probably get out. You can get out to the Appalachians that are really close to you, and you can probably do some snow chases there if you wanted to. Let's say if everyone's getting a snow day anyways, or even like a delay, I don't know, whatever, weekend, etc. You're pretty close to the Appalachians, so you're probably gonna want to explore some of that. Let's get some good shit there, some good snow there. That no, no, that does not sound like a good idea. The hurricane and a roller coaster, but hurricanes and roller coasters separate. Those are two things I want to do. Are we getting 2 a.m. yet? No, because hurricane, the Weather Channel just they go breaking news for every update. So I probably would have seen something. And then also you have to remember too with this next landfall, GFS has been in the Euro have been way above pressure-wise and initializations. So this is also what's making me think is if it's dropping it down at 982, if it's dropping it down 982, look where it was earlier today. Last run. Was it 982 as well? I mean, just earlier, in the 990s. Only again down to 96. Well, I mean, I say only, but had it peaking out here. So who knows what that in between, that 983 maybe gets down to 980, somewhere in between there, or close to 980, and then gets to 985. So with that second landfall, GFS might be overdoing a little bit in terms of the initialization, in terms of being a little too weak with the pressure. So this may be more like, could be more like 970-ish, 975-ish if GFS is not getting it completely right. Because again, it's a global model, not the highest. Euro's a little bit better, but still, it's not. Euro struggled a lot with the pressure. Track wise, that doesn't really affect it that much in terms of compare less. Like it's not a significant enough difference like for us to be impacted by track. But I'm looking at Georgetown and Myrtle Beach. Let's take a look at what's up, Bart. Let's take a look at let's take a look at I talked about you obviously just joined, but I think landfall somewhere in here-ish is where I think. I don't think it's Georgia. I would lean even North Carolina over Georgia, even though I know the the National Hurricane Center, the NHC, even though they have a little bit of Georgia in the cone and not even any North Carolina. I said 70% South Carolina and 30% Georgia or North Carolina, with like 20% going to North Carolina and 10% going to Georgia. That would, if I made a pie chart of where I think landfall is going to happen, and then I'm kind of leaning central to eastern is where I'm leaning in terms of landfall. So somewhere in there. But also you have to consider this is going to be a little bit of a cold core. It's going to be a little bit. So if you want to, it's not going to be like 100, and it's not going to be like a Category 4 hurricane. So it's not going to be, like what we just saw. It's like, and even this 130 is a big difference from 155. So, but even then, we're not going to be life-threatening 130. I guess we can't technically rule off like some craziness happens and it gets to like near major hurricane strength. I would put that, if we did a pie chart, I would put that in like the 5% probabilities. And then maybe like I don't know, it wouldn't shock me if this got the Cat 2. I'm starting to think here. But I would say more that's like 20, and then probably like 65%, I would say, chance of this being a Cat 1, and like, or 60-ish, and then like 10-15% at it being like a tropical storm. And even then the 70 to 75 mile per hour difference, that wouldn't be too much. Hopefully you enjoyed your time in Ocala, though. Or Ocala, however you say it. But you have to remember is if it makes landfall here, there's going to be a little bit cold core system. It's going to a little bit of some cold core characteristics, so a little bit of some mid-latitude cyclone characteristics where dry air is going to be working around into the east side of the core because we're seeing a little bit of stream interaction. So convection is going to get pushed to the north and northwest. So wherever this makes landfall, even though the strongest winds could still be on the east side, it may be a little bit harder to pull those down. You'll probably get more consistent strong winds on the northwest side of where this makes landfall. So that's where I would try to be if you want to see. And plus, you can avoid storms, less storm surge too. You can avoid more storm surge, I guess, is the proper way to phrase that. Because water, right? Because water will be moving, here and then here, but then also pulling out, right? Negative storm surge because of the way it sets up. Just like we saw negative storm surge, like we saw storm surge up to here, and then negative storm surge got pulled out into the ocean in Tampa Bay. We had to have gotten 2 a.m. 75 mile per hour, 980 millibars now. 75 miles per hour, 980. So it looks like the past few hours this weekend a good amount, but it looks like it is getting close to getting back over the ocean again. So where's that new position update? I know Eric's got me. He always puts that out there. Don't tell me he let me down. Or you just do radar? Man, I like the other one a lot better. What we're going to do is we're going to slide to... See, even then, I don't like this headline, weakens the category 1. It's true. It's not like it's even being misleading. I just don't like that headline because when people hear weekend, they can tend to let their guard down, and I don't want to give any reason to people to let their guard down. You notice when National Hurricane Center puts out their messages with their updates, they do put out their wind speeds, and then we say it weakened to this because we're doing some meteorological analysis. Oh no, I left this plugged in the whole time, and it's freaking 100%. Of course it is. I don't like it because notice, and you notice National Hurricane Center messaging is they don't say weakened to category 1. They go still life-threatening impacts to catastrophic storm surge. They still put their impacts, and they phrase it because they don't want people to let their guard down. Why is this glitching on me so much? Here we go. Still gusting though over 115 miles per hour. That's important. So sustained winds are 75, but still gusting, wind gusts 40 miles an hour above the sustained winds. What's it moving right now? Northeast. So now they say it's due northeast rather than northeast too. That's important because the angle it takes to get off quicker will be important. So the quicker we see this head, I guess technically it's in the geographical compass of northeast. I guess I guess, but this is even then. This is still more north northeast. This is northeast. So if it's continuing to move northeast, this would suggest the eastern side of the cone based on this graphic. And just this because this is part of their, they can't update the cone at 2 a.m. They update the cone every 6 hours. Even with the special updates, they could do a special updated cone if they saw some crazy recon changes, but there's no recon going in it right now. So if this gets off the coast, if this can get back into waters before 11 a.m., that'll be really promising for this storm. One more thing I was going to say about this itself is one thing that could possibly, we could have like a 985 pressure, maybe. We could have like a 985 pressure. But if it's a 985 pressure and there's some more cold core characteristics, typically it takes the pressure to get a lot deeper. The wind speeds don't have the same correlation to purely tropical systems. So it's possible like 990 millibar would be like your category 1. Your typical, upward 980s is typically your regular cat 1, but if it's like a mid 980s, it could still possibly be like a 70 mile per hour tropical storm if it's undergoing a little bit of an extratropical transition with a bit of a stream interaction at this point, like we talked about with dry air wrapping in. So it could just be a strong pressure tropical storm. That is one thing I could have not been taken into consideration as well. But if it's like 980 millibars, it's probably cat 1. And if it's probably not perfect on initialization with the pressure. So I mean, what did it have for 2 a.m.? 985, 5 millibars. It's 5 millibars too weak, and it's even looks a little bit too far west, to be honest, in my opinion. Way too far west, in my opinion. Way too far, way too far in terms of like exact specific details, but not in like the grand scheme of things. It's not life altering. Yep. Okay, just checking. Just checking. Yep. There you go. Just had to plug in my Mac. So this is why immediately what makes me think that given how too far west, not getting off land quick enough is what makes me think GFS trying to do it still goes into South Carolina, but some of those Georgia landfalls it had to southwest don't right. I charge my laptop to 100% every single time. Every single time. And if I didn't plug it in any of these streams, they would die. And I mean, like, we're going for a while. Don't get me wrong, but like 2.5 hours, you're telling me I only got 2.5 hours? It sucks, man. Even when I'm not streaming, it drains fast. But yeah, so I would probably GFS tries to go for a little bit like this. I'm leaning somewhere from here. I think somewhere in here to here. That's where I'm leaning. That's just if I'm making a forecast. Now, realistic, realistically, anywhere from here to here, we could see a landfall. If I had to make a forecast, I would cut it into here. Just personally. So maybe we see a strong. It's possible this thing can get him to a strong cat one. It's possible. There's some different. This is some new. This is like some. There's more variables with this that could make this intensity forecast a little bit less certain than the last one, in my opinion. At least in my opinion, it's possible I'm just overthinking the environment. Um, But usually, if there's a lot of things to think about with the environment, that means we have a lot of different variables and uncertainty in terms of intensification. So I guess we're not going to rule out something like the NAM in terms of intensity as terms of one of those upper end scenarios we'll use it as, even though we want to use the NAM more for track. And we'll use something like the Canadian as, um, the high end of pressure and the low end of intensity. There you go. Kind of using the globals like an ensemble split kind of right there. It's not what they're designed for, but it's what I did. That was it. That was a joke. I tweeted under it. I hope no one took this seriously, but I guess the Twitter tone was too hard. I thought that was somewhat clear, but I guess I didn't make that clear enough. Hurricanes do not cause earthquakes. No, I know, John. I know. I know. Yeah, no, the fault lines in the atmosphere are not. I mean, you could link up some indirect connection probably that, but there's no direct correlation between the fault lines and uh, hurricanes. Small ones before, and even then I didn't really notice them. I just saw them reported. So no, we can't nuke a hurricane to weaken it. Cannot we cannot do that. That will not work. John, it's late and stuff happens. Stuff happens at this time of the night. You got to be. different people have different brought up different ways, and everybody has a baseline where they start from. So it's my job to give the easiest way to understand it from at everyone's different baselines, because everyone's different. Everyone learns things different pace, and it's a lot of times not even their fault. But yeah, can a hurricane ever cause snow? I guess Sandy's the only example of that, really. A hurricane can't cause snow directly, but we can see a hurricane. A lot of these, we talked about these extratropical transitions. A hurricane can move into an extratropical system, become, a cold core system, and then we can see it transition into a snowstorm. It's possible, yes, but no hurricanes, and we see it happen more frequently in the Canadian Maritimes, in the far Atlantic Canada, rather than we do see it more often with the U.S. because Sandy's really the only last example we can use of that. Um, so no, a hurricane cannot be a snowstorm, but it can, transition into a snowstorm. The brown ocean effect is where, either there's a latent heat release from the ocean and the warm sea surface temperatures and the warm ocean temperatures that it just traveled on, or sometimes the ground can be so saturated that it's these the center likes to suck in moisture, so it's just using that to still intensify or hold strength really far in, like the Louisiana marshes. We can see that happen a lot of times. Or if really saturated and you're above average on rainfall for the year, you just saw a big rainfall event, that can help saturate and potentially intensify. And I think there's even more extreme cases of some, excuse me, of hurricanes that intensify well inland, but those are a little bit beyond what I would have to go deep and search for that, for those case studies and how those happen. No, we can't read it. Mother Nature is Mother Nature. We can't redirect. Actually, I've thought about it myself before. The aspect of potentially trying to make create weather. Like, I think about all the time. Can I, if I throw up, if I get the hose out and start pumping water out into the in during a snowstorm, can I get more moisture to get more snow bands over my house? Like, I've literally thought about that. How would that possibly work before? But we can't man make weather. Mother Nature does what she wants to do. It's natural. It's the most natural form of. It's the most natural thing we have on this earth. It's what comes out of the sky. I know, John. That doesn't. You hear what I'm saying? I've thought about it before. If I throw enough boiling pots of water into the into the sky, maybe I can get better snow bands. You would have to get like a lake a lake of water to do that. Like, that would just be going to an extreme. That's not even like a theory or something. That's just literally something I came up with. Just me thinking about it. That's not an actual thing. I'm curious. Are there more flash flood emergencies? Have they been issued? No more emergencies, but probably considerable tags for these flash flood warnings. That was the flash flood emergency. Yeah, I was the one. I talked about that earlier. I was the one that tweeted that. It was. It's. I don't like the question. It's just men that. I mean, I could. You want me to pull it out of the woodworks? I muted the conversations, but I bookmarked it so I could go back to it. This was the tweet. I mean, it's got almost 10. You know, it's got some interactions. Safe to say. But this video itself has 9 million views. But people had debating whether it was like was it a fish or was it a shark? I mean, shark is a fish, but a fish isn't always a shark. There you go. There's a little tongue twister right now. Yeah, this one. Yeah, it blew up. I was just tweeting off the top of the dome. I wasn't trying to make content just for fun, like entertainment. I was just like, I mean, there's some aspects of this where you have to keep yourself entertained, but also, I was just tweeting stuff out. It's off the top of the dome. People were debating whether or not this was like a tarpon or a shark, and I was like, listen, the person that tweeted it said it was a shark. So it looked a good amount like a shark. You could see a shark like fin. Yeah, it looked a lot like a shark. What do you want me to say? And one person was even like misinformation. I'm like, misinformation, like you're pissed off over a shark, whether or not it's a shark. Like, really, this thing's gonna just go back into the ocean. I don't know why you're so butthurt over me tweeting a shark. Like, I think there's more concerning things in the world to put your attention to at that moment than over the species of fish it is. It doesn't bother me that much. I'm just talking. I'm just talking. A little bit more personal was the Cantori stuff though, because I had what was, I mean, if I go with weird, someone's probably liked it at this point. Not that one. Who tweeted that one again? Oh, that was towards Mike Seidel and his, yeah. Where's that tweet at? No, that's not the one. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. This was the one. People are having a field day over this. The 300 retweets and you get 80 quotes. That means people got opinions. That means people got something to say. And they were like, "Why is he out there? Why is he going? He doesn't need to be out there. We get it. It's strong." You say that, but there's a lot of dumb people out there, and there's a lot of imagine like college kids like oh fuck man, I want to go. Oh, shit, I did not mean to use the F bomb, but yeah, I'm trying to talk about like like college kids. Let's go out in the storm and let's go see what it's like, man. Right? It can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Let's go take a drive. I'm gonna go walk out. Let's go for a swim. You'll be surprised the amount of people that think like that during a storm. You'd be surprised. So you doing your little analysis here from your comfortable sitting on your chair doesn't really make you qualified to. Is that you're not even that dumb though. You have some fear sensors in you, not like afraid, but fear sensors that kick in to know what to do smart though. Something smart. You probably have some idea of what you not being like weather actually. You know weather. I'm talking about just the general college kids. Man, let's go see what it's like. And it's easier to just throw opinions out with no adrenaline running, having to make quick decisions, comfortable sitting on your ass on your chair and trying to criticize people for what they're doing. Well, I wouldn't say you would be scared. I don't think you would be that. Just say like the fear. There's fear sensors in your brain that go off that tell you maybe I shouldn't do this. Like maybe I shouldn't stand here because maybe this would like backfire. That's what I'm talking about. But people got opinions. Jim Cantore has been doing this for over 3 decades. He is like the best of the best. He knows what he's doing. Even if he gets hit by something, he's not. This rarely ever happens to the point where he doesn't. You could. All it takes could be one massive piece of debris hit you in the head, but he's wearing a helmet, so if he gets hit, he's wearing a helmet and goggles, so he's not gonna get extremely hurt in the head. Unless like a building collapse on him or something. That's another case, but he's the best of the best. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing better than anybody else. They just think, and like the people think Weather Channel stopped sending him out. Dude, he's the one who wants to be in this. Are you kidding me? He's psycho. Yeah, he's psycho, but he's also a really good person. He's a really good, nice guy. He's not an idiot, but he understands how to communicate message, and he's not doing this just for the fun of it either. For up to him, I'm sure he would rather not. Like, there's part of him that's like, man, the adrenaline's crazy. I'm glad to be in this, but not like glad, but yeah, amazing to be a part of this and in this. But also, there's like part of him probably too. I'm getting old. I don't want to be caught in here. I don't want to get hit by a piece of debris. So there's part of that. But he knows if he stands out, that represents he's a build too. Like, he's got a low center of gravity because he's a little bit shorter, and he's completely jacked. So he's like, like 5'8", like 190, just jacked, right? So if he's getting tossed around with his low center of gravity and jacked frame, that just shows it shows people, those dumb college kids or whatever, dumb, young adults, or like, 25-year-old, your group of 25-year-olds just trying to go out in the storm. Oh, I'm able to do that's what's happening. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And there's even more beyond that too, but I'm kind of tired. I don't want to go talk about this like too much more. Yeah, I mean, we can scroll. We can scroll through. We can scroll through what I tweeted out. I mean, we can go chronologically almost. We don't want to go through every reply, but we can scroll through a lot of the stuff. So here is Port Charlotte getting rocked, I think. This is the western side of the eye wall. Aaron Rigsby, very good storm chaser. Obviously, some strong winds. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. And those storm surge shoals too. If you don't see any like, if you like, let's say maybe the max total you see is maybe only like 12 feet. Like I say only, but compared to like the 18-foot max they were looking at, I think this is the highest visible report we have so far. You're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to wait until the analysis when they do the analysis of the storm because they have storm surge folks that they have people that break down all this stuff, break down the damage like surveyors, and they look at to see how high the storm surge was, which is how we figured out how high it was with Laura back in 2020. So we won't find out the exact peak storm surge totals probably for months. Josh. If I bring the mic closer, I'm probably messing with your hearing right now, but yeah, yeah. This
Good
was
afternoon
Fort Myers earlier today.
And this is the worst of Hurricane Ian. We have come up here for safety from the surge. Look at the wind howling through here. And where we were earlier, it looks like there's 3 or 4 feet of water. Waves crashing over the area from this morning. These winds are howling hurricane force plus and gusting over 100 miles an hour. The entire area, everything that's not up 20 feet is underwater right now. And it's just, this is one of the worst hurricanes I've ever been in, and maybe the worst as far as covering. Over 25 years and 90 storms, to be right in the eye wall of a high-end Cat 4. And the wind, let's just listen to the wind. This just amazing. And the issue is we're going to stay in this eye wall for a foreseeable future. So this is going to continue. I got to believe Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Captiva, it's going to look like Mexico Beach after Hurricane Michael 4 years ago. I'm seeing debris floating in the Caloosahatchee River. If you can see it, looks like a North Atlantic Ocean storm here in Fort Myers. But let's turn back around and show this wind. Now it is getting channeled a little bit, but boy, this is just incredible. A hurricane season
Gators.
we thought wasn't going to even turn on.
I mean, it was
And
less
look
for
at
me
this.
and about the person that asked the question, but
And we've got our first landfalling
I,
hurricane shortly here in the continental
the
United States.
wildlife's pretty smart, so
I'm going to go right around the
usually
corner
they
here.
can figure out where they
Stay
need
out
to
of
go.
the wind.
That would be my best
Oh
answer.
my gosh. The ocean, the river, and the Gulf have just taken over everything. Water out here looks like about 4 feet deep. The pool has been completely annihilated by the surge.
Yeah, Seidel's he's really good.
Gusting over 100 miles an hour. All right, Steph Englewood.
There's Cantori and
you think we'll
Kuta
be able to
Gorder.
share the eye or what?
It's possible. We're only about 20 miles away from each other. And you can see how we're both just getting hammered.
Stephanie
But we're
Abrams.
not the heart of the eye wall yet. We're still getting it here. And as you can see, it's really rough. I will say, we just got an alert on our phone that emergency vehicles are no longer responding here in Sarasota. And look, we should leave. That's why we have them. Is because they're accessible entities. They're skinny. They don't have lots of leakage. Obviously, we have the compounds. Those are ripping off from time to time. You can see this one is struggling. But what I will say is, I don't know if you can see it anymore. There's a palm tree. Also, if you can come by me, here, I'll hold you. There's a palm tree that's starting to lean on one of these palms down here. And hopefully it doesn't hit their roof, but the visibility's starting to go down. And so far, that's the damage we've seen of these trees, and then some siding. If you can even see it starting to rip away from this house over here, and you see how that becomes a projectile. So if windows aren't boarded up, those can hit it right in that sweet spot, and then you can get all the rain and the wind inside the house. You can see numerous houses boarded up. Everyone is inside here. Everyone's staying safe. I've not seen anyone.
This was the actual Cantori clip.
All right, you know what? Just came flying by. All right, you
That's
know what?
definitely going to be a bruise, but he's not
I'm just
like
gonna come in here for a second.
devastating. Like it's probably like a bruise on the shin or something.
Give me a second. Jimmy, all right? All right, I'm fine. I'm fine. You just can't stand up. All right. I'm gonna let you guys look at the pictures, okay? Now,
There's another award for Jim probably after that. Also, listen to this eye wall lightning. Jim got freaked out here. It was close. Eye wall lightning strike, very close to
you're in
him.
that wall. Steph, you're in that wall.
Just a classic yacht on the same level as the second floor. The second floor of your house. That's not crazy at all. powerful fire going on there. You can hear it too. You can hear the electricity. That's always a scary sound. Yeah, that was that eye wall cooking too. Those two. I should have cut this line off more here-ish, but. And how about, I'll show you this one. So the hurricane hunters, they went out and their plane dropped 1,000 feet. I'll switch to the end. Their plane dropped 1,000 feet. Wait till the end of this video. They hit a mesoboard, and when they show out the window, notice all the lightning too. Notice that. Look at that right there. And look out the window too. That's lightning. That's high wall lightning. Ridiculous amount of high wall lightning. So their plane dropped. Boom. All like lose all gravity there for a second. Notice that, right? Notice when it gets all quiet for a second, like the camera stops, comes up. Right here, this is they're losing altitude, and then that's crazy. It's one of the more crazier experiences you'll see. And just so quickly, they dropped about 1,000 feet in altitude.
Yeah, we're good.
Yep. Appreciate everyone that came in. Yeah, we'll end it. We'll end it in a couple minutes. We'll slide through a couple more of these videos, and then we'll call it a stream. And the storm surge was just so. It was just big time tonight, or earlier today.
It's amazing that we're even seeing these pictures.
Sanibel Island, Severe Studios. Yeah, we'll end it after this one. As long as you guys get no more questions. Sanibel Island probably get hit the hardest, to be honest.
Right over our camera right now. And it's amazing that we're even seeing these pictures.
They reported 150 mile per hour sustained winds today. Any more questions? Is that it? Yeah, of course. I mean, and even after that stream too, I just till 6 I was up till like 6, almost 6 a.m. After that, I was thinking about go to bed, and I saw a recon, and I was like, man, if recon's almost there. And I waited for that recon pass, and I guess it was kind of worth it. They found a 140-mile-per-hour upgrade, so I I'm on so limited sleep, but I'll probably sleep in a lot more tomorrow. So we'll get some good sleep tonight, hopefully. So appreciate it, John. Appreciate it. Alrighty. We'll probably stream again tomorrow night. I think so. We should be able to. But yeah. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Peace.